Welcome in, everyone. You're listening to Bulls Central. It is, of course, that time of year where we're in the dead of the off season, where we're all sitting around waiting for training camp, seeing where the Bulls, whether or not they actually finally signed Josh Giddey to a new deal. But that doesn't stop us from bringing in our special guests, our Bulls insiders, who are closely covering this team to give us the latest on what's going on behind the scenes with the team. I've got a special one here for you today, a first-time guest on the channel. You know him for all of his great work covering the team for the Bigs Media. It is my pleasure to welcome to the show Drew Stevens from the Bigs. Drew, how are we doing, man? You make time.
I'm pretty good, man. I appreciate you having me. No problem at all. I'm happy to talk Bulls with you for sure.
Love it. Now, if you haven't already, be sure to give Drew a follow at Drew_H_Stevens. Check out all of his great work that him and the team are doing covering the Bulls at the Bigs. I'll leave a link to that all in the description. Now, Drew, we'll talk about the Bulls offseason and expectations for this upcoming season, but where I wanted to start, actually, probably the most notable happening of the offseason, it's actually the contract extensions of Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley. I wanted to start there because if I recall, I feel like you were one of the first to report on that extension. And then I recently saw that you mentioned that extension goes through 27-28, 27-28 season. This, of course, has caused a lot of frustration and confusion from Bulls fans given the lack of success we've seen during their tenure. So I guess my first question is, because I feel we haven't received a justification for this, but what was the rationale for why the Bulls felt the need to extend their leaders in the front office? And, were you as a reporter surprised by this?
So I wasn't surprised just because of what we've seen with the history of this team and how Jerry Reinsdorf has kind of kept front offices in place for long periods of time. Um, I would say that I'm still kind of waiting for an answer on why exactly ownership felt compelled to keep this front office group and Billy Donovan in place moving forward, at least for the next 3 seasons. We haven't really gotten any word on that, so all we can really do is speculate. And to that end, I would assume it's because, although it took them a long time to get off of the first iteration of the roster build that they went under a few years ago, they have started to try to lay the groundwork for the next kind of iteration of what this team will be, getting off of Zach LaVine, bringing in Trey Young and Zach Collins and Kevin Herter. Obviously, Nicole Vucevic is still here, so we'll have to see what's going to happen with that. He's coming into the last year of his deal. But, they talk a lot about the camaraderie and the connectivity between ownership and the front office and the coaching staff. So I think that's kind of what they're rolling with, and they're hoping that because of that unity or that commitment to kind of each of those three levels above the actual play on the basketball court, that can lead to, more fruitful results here in the future.
It's funny because a lot of times I feel that front offices in a way deserve some sort of grace because of the fact that their jobs is it's more of a long term endeavor, right? It's not like a coach just try to get through the season type thing, and so in that regard, sometimes like okay, well, I guess it makes sense to extend them or to keep them around for a bit of a longer term to see whether or not they can recover from that first iteration, for lack of a better word. My question, and maybe you know or you don't know, because they never share this type of information. For both AK and for Mark Eversley, were they effectively on an expiring contract, if you will, like they needed to be extended, or was there still more time on their current agreement where they could have at least say waited another year or so?
So I would need to do a little checking on that, but I believe that um, they were on the last year of their deals, if I'm not mistaken. But
Okay.
it's also been said that they had already had their contracts extended before this offseason came
Right.
about. So, and then that would make sense because you get them done first, and then you go ahead and start negotiating with Billy Donovan and trying to get him locked up. But again, secrecy kind of reigns supreme with this franchise. They are committed to keeping those types of things private, which is, it's their right to do. But there's always kind of more of a speculative nature when trying to pin down what's the goings on of the business dealings with the Bulls.
Was it odd, during the press conference after the draft, Mark Eversley, came to the podium and he mentioned they weren't going to talk about contract extensions. I get that they don't have to disclose the contracts of members of the front office or the coaching staff for that matter, the amount of money, the length of the agreements, etc. But to me, it seemed a little odd, the lack of transparency being given publicly over this. Were you surprised at all by that? Just the fact that Mark was kind of like, yeah, we're not going to talk about contracts when that was sort of the hot topic at that point in time.
Not really. Again, just because of the history,
Yeah.
we knew that they weren't going to divulge much information, if any at all. You kind of have to rely on the national guys breaking the stories, in terms of it getting out across the masses. And I think that was his first opportunity to speak since the news came out that they had been extended and that they were trying to get Billy locked in. So no, it wasn't a surprise. I just, there was a question that I asked him in reference to him and AK being extended, and he started off his first response going back to saying that he wasn't going to speak about, the particulars of the extension. I had to kind of remind him, hey, my question really wasn't specifically for
Yeah.
that numbers or anything like that. I just want to know, in your mind, why do you think you guys were extended, or what expectations were laid out for you and Arturas moving forward? But he got to dance around the question a little bit, and again, that's his prerogative. But as uh as one of the members of the beat, you just try to hold their feet to the fire as best as we can. Um, and you got to at least ask the questions. You don't know exactly what answer is going to be given, but you got to give them the opportunity to answer it nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean that's part of your job, right? Holding them accountable to an extent, right, for some of these things. All right, let's talk about Josh Giddey for a little bit. I mean, it's gone on for so long now that I feel like people have almost forgotten that he remains unsigned. What's the latest on the ongoing restricted free agency of Josh Giddey? Any developments that are worth noting that you might be able to share?
No, no new developments. No new developments. As far as I can report here with you, they're still apart on the terms of whatever deal they're going to come to an agreement on. It's been said that Josh and his representatives are looking for upwards of $30 million a year, while the Bulls are, you know, kind of holding firm at 20 mil a year. So there's still some distance to be made up, some ground to be made up between those two parties before a deal can be had. And I'm sure that, if one party is going to relent on one end, whether it be the money or the years, the other party is going to want the opposite. You know what I mean? So if the Bulls are not going to come up much higher to get to that $30 million number, then Josh, I'm sure, is going to want to have less time on his deal so that he can hit the free agents market again relatively quickly. So we're still in the holding pattern, still waiting, but I think we're getting closer to a resolution. Obviously, as we head into September and media day and training camp, and all these restricted free agents have the deadline, a hard deadline of October 1st, whether or not they're going to sign that qualifying offer, or what their decisions are going to be.
And so it sounds like they are, in fact, still about that $10 million apart at this point in time, or do you think it's gotten a little bit closer than what it was maybe just a few weeks ago?
So I can't report right now if they're any closer. I can only assume that they are, just because we're getting a little bit close to that period of time where something has to get done. But obviously, they're still far enough away as where a deal has yet to be agreed upon. So like I said, we're kind of in a holding pattern. We're still waiting to hear what the final numbers and years are going to be.
Is there a world, do you think there's a coin offer?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Do you think there's a real world where Josh Giddey could potentially accept a qualifying offer?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I know there were only one or two teams that could have made a serious offer for him this summer. They chose not to. I'm not saying that he's not a valuable player in some respects, but the market is what it is. I don't think there's a ton of teams who are necessarily looking for a point guard that would give him any more confidence that if he were to take the qualifying offer, that something better would present itself next summer. And the Bulls can still offer him the most amount of
Right.
money next offseason. So I find it hard to believe, or I'd be hard pressed to think that he is going to end up playing on that qualifying offer this upcoming season. Um, I think for him, it's going to be about getting the most amount of money he can right now. And if he feels like the Bulls are not coming up enough to meet that $30 million figure, then, like I said earlier, trying to get back on the market as soon as he can.
What's a fair deal you think for Josh Giddey? I know there's a hard spectrum between a lot of Bulls fans and where they sort of feel about Josh Giddey and his long-term future with the team. What do you think would be a good deal for the Bulls if Shams the Shams bomb comes out tomorrow? What's the number that you would love to see?
I think I'm kind of looking at maybe like 22.5 million
Okay.
annually, or, maybe a contract that starts a little high, like a descending contract, you know.
Yeah.
And again, maybe if you're the Bulls, they are probably trying to get him under contract for more than just those 3 years. I think personally, I'm still not quite sold on Josh or the direction of this team. So I'm looking at 3 years. See what you have in 3 years. If he
Sure.
lives up to that contract or surpasses it, surpasses expectations, great. You can pay him what you want to pay him then. And if he doesn't, you can move forward that way as well and see what else is out there.
Yeah, speaking of 3 years short deals, and at that point in time, you decide what you want to pay your player depending on how they're performing. Kobe White, obviously heading into this season on an expiring contract, he's not going to sign an extension, early extension, so he's set to become an unrestricted free agent next summer. So I guess the begs the question: should the Bulls look to trade him while he's still on this very team-friendly contract before he's due for a big payday? Avoid the risk of him walking for nothing. What's the latest you're hearing on the Kobe White trade front?
Yeah, so I think the Bulls, the front office has kind of fallen right back into some of those same traps that we saw them fall under when they brought in Lonzo Ball and DeMar DeRozan, when they signed Zach LaVine to that max deal, Nikola Vucevic now, Patrick Williams. Like I think they probably should try to see what they can get for Kobe White, but with him on the last year of his deal, I don't know how many takers they're going to have. Whoever team trades for him, now they're not getting him for as long a period of a time. They have to pay him as well, or risk losing him as well, and giving up assets to do so. So I worry that, again, this front office has gotten to a point where their players have much more value to them than around the league, and that's nothing against Kobe White. Kobe White is like your favorite Bulls fan's favorite player. You know what I mean? Like, he's easy to root for.
Right.
He's coming to his own, especially his last 2 seasons as he's gotten more opportunities. But this front office has had a bad habit of bleeding value from their players, and I think the same thing, unfortunately, is going to happen with Kobe White, because you
And
you
I
keep
mean
him and you
that's
end up signing
one.
him to a longer deal. I'm sorry, if they end up holding on to him, and maybe they end up paying him upwards of $30 million. Now, what is his value around the league? He was
Yeah.
pretty valuable on that bargain deal you had him on, but now he's so far outplayed that. But you've also held on to him probably too long, so it's they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. If Kobe doesn't take another leap, or Modest doesn't take another leap, or Josh doesn't take another leap, or Noah Singate doesn't take another leap in a year or two or three, um, it's an interesting place that they've pinned themselves. As much as they want to talk about being a team in transition and banking on the development of the players that they brought in, the young guys with experience. I'm interested to see where it goes, but I'm not that optimistic, to be honest with you.
So are you not optimistic at all when it comes to at least Modest and Noah Senge? Because I think a lot of fans are kind of maybe riding the hopium, if you will, that these two will be the saviors of this franchise for the future, right? Obviously, very raw prospects at this point in time, but I feel like that's
Yeah.
what a lot of us are hanging on to right now. I mean, how do you feel about those guys? At least, maybe that's sort of much further along down the line than we're talking about, Kobe White and Josh Giddey, things like that. But how do you feel about those guys and sort of that path forward?
So I feel really good about Modest. He has the work ethic, has the attitude. He's gonna get, I think, the runway to meet whatever potential he has. I think that there may be a little bit too much on his shoulders right now. Not in
Yeah,
terms of what he can and cannot handle, just in terms of the future. Every fan, it feels like
the
just in
expectations.
all of it. Yes, yes. And I don't know that that's fair for him, considering how his rookie year went and the amount of time he had to earn to get minutes on the court. He played really well when he got starters minutes and was able to play off of Josh and Coby and Vooch to an extent. But I think there's still a lot of room to grow. And Noah, if I squint, I can see the bones of another player who could have a bright future, but it's just so early,
Yeah.
obviously, in his development, in his career. And I really don't know how much time he's going to spend with the big team this upcoming season.
And forgive me because I'm following so many different people, and I can't remember who was your sort of ideal draft prospect when give with the players that were available at number 12. Was Noah the guy that you would have wanted, or was there another guy that was still on the board that you would have liked to have seen the Bulls select?
No, Noah wasn't. I think he wasn't my top choice. I was kind of hoping against hope that Kaman Malawach would drop.
Yeah, same.
There was even a part of me that really kind of fell in love with Colin Murray Boyles just
Mm,
because of his work ethic. I know a lot has been said about his shooting ability, but he just does so many things really well. It's interesting that he ended up in Toronto, where they're just a team stacked full of like wings and
right.
other guys who don't necessarily shoot the ball well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens up north with that team. But no, Noah wasn't like high up on my draft board, but I understood or I understand the reasoning behind the selection. I think that if we're to believe Joe Dumars, drafting Noah as opposed to taking the supposed deal that Joe Dumars offered them, I worry that might
Yeah.
come back and bite them in the butt. And again, can speak to how this front office doesn't necessarily value draft capital, and they look more toward maybe a better way to put it is they don't value like getting additional draft capital to go along with what they already have in their cupboard. And I think that the way to rebuild in this NBA, and especially with a team and a franchise like the Bulls, who we know is kind of hard cap in the sense that they're not going to go into the luxury tax. Like you want to get as many cost control players as you can, and you just hope that you get more bites at the apple to really get something to pop moving forward. But that's just not the way that this front office has chosen to operate. We'll just have to see if this plan can pick up some steam moving forward.
In a way, I almost refuse to believe that the Bulls were offered that. I mean, like, but Joe Dumars
You
did
don't want
say
to believe it, right?
yeah, he's like, we went from what did he say from like 9 to 13 or whatever it was, right? They were asking, and everyone declined, and it's like, you still could have gotten a great player. What was it, 17? Is that where the Hawks ended up selecting? Because that was
I
what
think
that
it
was the
was
Pelicans pick or something like. Might have been 18. I don't know.
maybe
Maybe it was
20.
further down, but it's like you still could have gotten a decent player that you could have worked with, and an
Yeah.
unprotected Pelicans pick in a stacked Western Conference. I'm I'm just baffled, and so it's like in a way, I like to think that maybe the Bulls weren't offered that, or maybe it was what Dumar said. Maybe at that time it wasn't unprotected, right? It's like, oh, we were offering top 10 protected. The Bulls were like, no, we don't want to do top 10 protected, and then they got so desperate that by the time they got to the Hawks, they were like, all right, fine, we'll make it unprotected, because I just don't see how I can't get behind how they could have passed up on that, and it's like going back to what you were saying about the luxury tax essentially being a hard cap for the Bulls. I mean, it sucks, but that's how it is, right? We know that the Bulls don't go into the luxury tax. And so in those instances, you need those rookie scale contracts, right? You need those cost controlled assets. So Yeah, man, I'm with you. That was frustrating. It almost because I like the pick. I like the pick at number 12 of Noah Senge, but then when you found that out, it almost kind of like left a sour mouth in your, sour taste in your mouth after the draft. But
Yeah.
I did want to ask about Billy Donovan. So just talking about him for a sec, because he was another guy in the franchise that received a contract extension, despite again the Bulls only having achieved one playoff appearance in his 5 seasons with the team, just one winning season during that span. Billy Donovan is now the third longest tenured coach in the league, only behind Eric Spoelstra and Steve Kerr. The Bulls clearly see something in Billy to want to keep him around, when more likely than not, other franchises would probably have let a player or coach like that go if similar results were had. Do you think Billy Donovan is the man for the job to be the head coach while this team heads in this latest direction of a youth movement rebuild, whatever you want to call it?
For for this franchise's goals, I think he's perfect. I think he's perfect. They're and I say that
Keep you in the middle.
yeah, sort of. Like I say that respectfully because this team wants to compete. They are not interested in giving all of their young players all of the time. You know what I mean? Like ripping
Yeah.
this thing down to the studs and just letting guys play in the fire, so to speak. And Billy is going to wring every ounce of wins that he can out of this team, and that's what the front office wants. And seemingly, that's what ownership wants as well. Like they want this team to compete. Our definitions, you and I, might be different than the front office and the ownership's definition of compete, but this is what it is for the foreseeable future, and this is the way they want to run it.
Well, let me ask you this though, because a lot of people like to refer back to the end of last season, post All-Star break, again, March, April basketball. We have to, put that qualifier in there. I mean, could the Bulls replicate that, right? And do they owe it to themselves to at least see if they can? And if they do, maybe they're on. I mean, I don't think it's a championship level team by any means, right? You could probably squeak into the playoffs in the Eastern Conference because it's pretty wide open. But what happens in that instance, right? Do they keep doubling down and trying to, focus on this youth movement, build upon it even further, and try to build through the middle as they're trying to do? What do you think about that scenario?
I think I think they're definitely trying to build through the middle, but I do think they owe it to themselves to see what Josh Giddey can be, to see how much he can help Miles Brazellus develop, to see if Coby White has another step up in his development to meet. Because, like we talked about earlier, when he's given reign to do his thing, Coby White has showed up. Um, so I think they do owe it to themselves to see what this team can do. And they played, to me, a more entertaining style of basketball than we saw the last year or two, where it was still very DeMar centric.
Yeah.
They switched their shot profile, which we've heard them speak about, time after time, and take pride in that. Obviously, they still have a lot of work to do on the defensive side of the ball, and by all accounts, this front office knows that. They see it too, and that's part of the reason why they brought in Isaac Okoro, was to try to help get things settled on that side of the ball. But um, because of the way the Eastern Conference is shaping up and the style of play that this team has adopted, I mean, there's opportunities to get some wins for sure, and for them to, if not be a play-in team again, maybe try to, you know, sneak in past the play-in. I think me personally, I've got them at about 34 wins, but that's not
Okay.
counting like the last stretch of the season. The last 20 games of the season, I believe they have 13 on the road, 7 at home. They've got like Washington twice, Memphis twice. And I think there could be some wins to be had there from teams who have either let go of the rope in terms of them trying to better position themselves for draft capital, or playoff positioning. Like they feel like they've got it wrapped up or sewn up, so they're not necessarily going quite as hard, which we saw at the tail end of last season.
Do you think, the Bulls scheduled to start the year? I know you're talking about the end of the season. Their schedule to start the year is pretty rough.
Yeah.
Do you foresee a scenario where, I mean, the Bulls come out of the gate and they're really struggling, right? And they're sitting at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Do the Bulls, meaning the front office, do they finally accept reality in a way and actually pull the trigger and try to quote unquote tank? Or do you think that's just not really in their DNA? It's just not possible?
Nah, I don't think that's in that DNA, Jamal. I don't think. I think that's probably wishful thinking from the Bulls fans who are like on their hands and knees begging for this franchise to tank for better draft positioning. Um, I just don't see them doing that unless, God forbid, knock on wood,
Injury
someone
or
were to
something.
get injured. Yeah, that's the only way I can see them kind of throwing it in and giving the younger guys, the really younger guys, more time. It'll be interesting to me to see if they do move off of Vooch when it happens in the season and what the rotation looks like behind that and how this team plays without, you know, arguably the best player they had on the team last season in certain metrics.
Yeah. I was gonna say I was gonna get you out of here on this one. What's the latest on Vooch? It sounds like, it's trending toward the fact that he's gonna start, with the team this year. Maybe they try to trade him at the deadline. Has there been any interest on the trade front during the offseason for Vucevic?
Nothing that I've heard of. The
Mm.
biggest thing to come out was Vooch putting to bed all the speculation and rumors about a potential buyout.
Right.
I don't know if you saw that
I
the interview.
did.
He gave. Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, and I actually made a video on this. It was like, there's no way the Bulls are going to buy out Vucevic unless he's willing to forego a good amount of his salary. I mean, come on, you know who owns this team? They're not,
Yeah.
paying a guy to not play on the organization. Yeah, I knew that was never going to be the case. Do you think he will be traded at some point during the season, or do you think they're just, if they don't get a good offer, they let, his contract expire and they let him walk in free agency?
I think ideally they would find a new home for him for his sake,
Yeah,
for the future of this team's sake, kind of getting things rolling all the way in the direction they want to go and not holding on to old luggage, so to speak. But
sure.
we've seen them just hold on to guys, man, just clutch them to death, you know. So
Yeah,
I I will hold my breath on them trying to move him. Obviously, at last trade deadline, there was speculation about them wanting a first round pick.
right.
And coming into the summer, the thought process being that the groundwork was laid to get something going for maybe him or Coby or maybe even Io. But I just don't see, you wanted a first round pick last season, didn't get it. You're not gonna get that this time around. So what are you willing to get in return for Vooch.
Right.
And we talked about them not necessarily valuing like additional draft capital. They value second round picks even less. So I
Right.
just I worry that they're going to be holding on to him, and it's just going to be kind of what we've seen it be the last few years.
Yeah, it's stuff like that, right? Where you heard all the reports that the Bulls were seeking a first round pick for Vucevic, and I'm just like, that's the stuff that concerns me because you see, it's like the for lack of a better word, lack of self awareness, thinking that you're going to be able to get a first round pick for 34-year-old Nikola Vucevic, who granted it was having a great season last year, but that's just teams aren't going to give up that kind of offer, right, for Vucevic, and so it makes you question even more how serious this front office is, or I guess how realistic the front office is anyway. But
Yeah.
anyway, Drew, my man, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to meet with me. It has been great having you on. Hope to do it again soon, sometime. Best of luck with everything going into the season. Hope you're able to enjoy the rest of the offseason before things start getting busy for you. But thanks for making the time, man.
Hey man, I appreciate it anytime.
Sounds good. And everyone, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next one.